I am joined here by Christian Zeitvogel, who is 21. He is a junior at Kalamazoo College in Michigan. Previously, he played 2 years as an offensive lineman before retiring from the school's football team. He is pursuing a double major in political science and German and is looking to pursue a career as a civil rights attorney. So, welcome, Christian. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
You wrote an article on OutSports. You've written a couple articles about your experiences with self-harm. I see a lot of numbers from the Trevor Project that talk about LGBT youth are, the statistics on self-harm. I see those posted on social media often. And a lot of people like me may fit part of it, but I am not in the young category anymore. You are kind of the category that they are talking about. I'm curious, how does it feel when you see those kind of numbers posted?
That's a really interesting. It's one that's not a question I've been asked before. Um, I honestly don't know how I feel. I guess it's so. I will say the first time I was depressed back in 2013 or so. One of the big issues behind that was the feeling of isolation and the feeling that I'm alone. No one, I was an angsty preteen. I thought no one else could possibly understand what I'm going through. No one else is experiencing this. I am totally unique in my struggle. No, that's not the case. And not to say it's a good thing that it's not the case, but more and more people are coming out and more people are willing to talk about these shared issues that they have. So, yes, it's not necessarily the best thing to reduce it down to a number or reduce me down to a statistic saying that I'm 1 in 4 people who have mental illness, or yes, I'm, what is it, like 4 or 8 times more likely because I'm gay to be depressed or something like that. Yes, it's not necessarily the most humanizing factor when it comes to the statistics, but I think it does definitely tie into the whole idea that we are not alone, and there are people who are sharing these same experiences, and there are people out there who can help you. So your back is not up against the wall.
Absolutely. You talk about being bullied when you're younger, and you're talking about being a little bit more introverted, and especially before finding football. I cannot fathom what bullying may look like, especially in the age of the internet. And I am so grateful that I did not have to kind of also wrestle with what my online profiles or presence look like. I'm just curious to get your sense of like what does bullying look like and feel like these days.
In more recent years, I don't know if you want to call it bullying. I don't know if you want to call it just uh, a toxicity that exists within the gay community. Honestly, I'd say that I've experienced more bullying within the gay community than anywhere else, which is really interesting and kind of ironic. Um, so yes, when I first came out, there were some people who said like, "Oh, this is just an attention grab. You're not actually gay, or you can't be gay because X, Y, and Z." Or you're just trying to use this to push whatever agenda you have. I don't know. But basically, there were people who accused me of faking my gayness.
And that was from people within the LGBT
Yes, that was from
community.
people within my high school.
Wow.
Yeah, it, just strange. But I'd say bullying in this day and age is less of a bullying and more of an isolation. It's so easy to block people online. It's so easy to um, for me, I'd say it's more of an issue that exists within social media, and it's an issue that exists within dating apps, especially within the gay community, with body positivity. That was one thing that I've always dealt with before and after coming out was the fact that I'm big. I've always been big, and that was something that I was bullied for in high school, but I could always justify it to myself because I was playing football. I was an offensive lineman. You have to be big to play that position. You have to be big to play football in general. So I could always sort of justify my giant stomach because I was playing football. Once I stopped playing football, it became a much bigger issue because I lost the fetish of being a gay football player. I was just a big gay man. And so that was something really tough to deal with. And it's something still tough to deal with. Even here in Germany, there's the same sort of toxicity when it comes to body image and lack of body positivity or image positivity. Um, and the idea of, or the fact that, oh, if you don't look like if you don't look like a porn star, then what the fuck are you doing? Sorry, then what are you doing here? what, why do you even bother to exist? That happened with one of my exes. That was a really rough experience. It happened, yeah. It's universal. It happens in Germany. It happens in the U.S. It's pervasive. It's really difficult. I'd say that that's the biggest issue these days. Is, for me at least, um, is how effectively social media can post the best side of us without showing what's actually going on underneath. And yeah, the idea that there are so many people out there who are perfect, that have a six pack, that are models, etc. So, and that's obviously not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's you've talked about, you know, experiencing depression, rejection from people within the LGBT community, body image. At what point did self harm come up for you in your life as a way to kind of cope with these things?
So it was, for me, self harm was always the most potent or most effective coping mechanism, um, just because of what is required to go into it. As I sort of talk about in the article, like, or in my second article, I talk about the mentality and what is required to commit self harm. A lot of people think that self harm is just for attention. Sure, that is probably the case for some people. Self harm is a very classic cry for help, but that's not always the case. In my case, I was not trying. I was not trying to make a cry for help. I just knew that I needed help, and I eventually confessed to my therapist and to my family that this was happening. But to me, it was such a potent, or it was such an important coping mechanism um, because of the effect that it had on me. So we are evolutionary creatures. We are programmed to survive. We are programmed to take care of ourselves. And so to actively go against that and tell my to override my body's function to protect myself by taking a knife to myself, by taking a razor to myself, it takes a lot of energy to go through that. And so there were nights where I was too tired or I couldn't sleep. I had really bad insomnia. Nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do to help me sleep until I did that. In which case, I was exhausted afterwards. Um, or there's such strong emotions that come up in me, and I'm scared of hurting other people, so I would rather hurt myself. And especially being the self-cynical person that I am, I believe that I deserve to be punished this way. Um, yeah, there was just a lot that went into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you talk about like the idea of this, a lot of people's misconceptions or assumptions about everyone is that it's coming from a place of for attention. When you first started talking about this, either in your personal life or in the article, what kind of reception did you get from people around you, and did you encounter those kind of misconceptions?
Surprisingly and thankfully, no, I did not really experience that at all. Um, no, really, it was just it was tough because you it's a good problem to have, but you realize how much people care about you. Um, and especially in my case, where I come from a very supportive family, I come from a very wide network of people who are all very caring and very compassionate people. And so I think that that was the worst part about coming out, was the disappointment in their eyes, not because I was doing this, just the shame that I let it get so bad and that I didn't reach out for help sooner, or because self-harm is such a serious thing, the fact that I did it at all. And I mean, I know that my mother lay awake at night because she was scared that I wouldn't be alive the next morning. Um, so I mean, I get it. It's I've gone through the same thing with people who I care about who have gone through that as well. Um, it's really difficult to establish some of the nuances that go into self-harm. That, yes, it's very closely associated with suicide, but it does not necessarily mean that I want to die. It really is, at the end of the day, it is a coping mechanism, much not a good one. It's certainly not a good one, but some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to drugs or sex or whatever. In my case, I turned to self-harm. Um, and that's sort of why I talk about it as an addiction in my article, is because it, just because I'm no longer doing that, just because I haven't taken, just because I haven't harmed myself in like 2.5 years now, um, does not mean that it's not still an issue. It doesn't mean that I don't still think about it almost every single day. There's still those urges. There's still the drive or the coercive force inside of me that wants to do it, that says this is good for me. Um, this is a healthy coping mechanism. It's no different from anything else. And realizing that that's not the case.
It's interesting you talked about being on kind of both sides, both having experienced it yourself and also having friends who have the experience. What kind of support either do you want that would be most useful to you when you're particularly struggling, or do you offer to your friends who you know are struggling with this?
Again, this is gonna sound like really ungrateful, but this is the truth. In that it's sometimes difficult to have such supportive people in your life who care so much, just because I know that if I did tell them, if I did tell them like I'm having these thoughts, I'm struggling with this, then their immediate reaction would be, okay, let's get you to a hospital or something like that. And that's not the case. That's not what I need. So recently, as I've talked about it with people here in Germany, their solution has been, and fortunately, I haven't had to use it yet, but the idea of getting help and being able to talk to someone who's completely separate from me and separate from my life. And so the idea of hotlines and online resources that exist, that, again, I haven't had to use it yet, but this is something that I'm really surprised I haven't thought about before. Just because, yes, I do need to be honest with myself in acknowledging the fact that these are still things that I think about. These are still issues that I have, but it's tough to talk about it with people who I love, because I don't want them to worry. I don't want them to be scared.
It's interesting you bring up the supportive people that you have in your life. That's also not a solution. That also doesn't automatically end the thoughts or some of the desire. Just like the comparing it to addiction, I think is a great one, because that doesn't solve that doesn't solve the issue. It provides an outlet that you can go to get help with it. Uh, do you think that the supportive people in your life understand that the level to which it may continue, or the kind of the fact that it may be an ongoing struggle that you think about?
So I'd say it really depends on the person, and it depends on my ability to assess how much they can understand it. Um, so like when I got my tattoo, that dealt with self-harm and suicide and mental health and things like that. My, it was to cover up the scars that I have here from self-harm. And at first, my mother just couldn't fathom it. She thought that I was trying to memorialize the fact that I was harming myself. She thought that I was just trying to evoke bad memories, and that was not the case. Or, like, there are times now where I'll be at home and I'll be in the kitchen cooking because I love to cook, and I have to use a knife for quite a bit of things. It was my job for a year, was to use very sharp knives for a year. And her just casually making the comment, you know, I'm so glad I don't have to worry about you ever harming yourself ever again. Oof, okay,
Wow.
yeah, that is quite I don't want to scare you, mom, but that's not necessarily the I'm not saying I do this, but it's not something that's just gone forever. This isn't just a happy. There's no closure necessarily with this.
The using a knife in the kitchen, I absolutely relate to that. I am the absolute same way, and it can be a butter knife that I'm using to, like, something that is no serious threat to me or anyone around me, but it is absolutely, you know, I will absolutely have thoughts anytime I use any kind of knife, in the kitchen or eating. So yeah, I completely
Yeah.
understand that.
So I'd say it really just depends on who I'm with and their ability to understand it. I think obviously people who have gone through it are probably the best people to talk to. Um, because there was one time that I did relapse, and I reached out to a friend of mine who had gone through it, and we've talked about it before, and we have a very similar mindset about it, and um, and sort of sharing the idea that it's an addiction, and so sending it to him and him saying, "Look, it's okay. Don't. It's okay. Just get through tonight. It's gonna be okay. We all make mistakes. I am 400 days clean or whatever, and you can do it too. We're gonna get through it together."
Is there, just to wrap up, is there anything else that you thought would be important to mention, or anything you would share to maybe young LGBT people that might be struggling with self harm or some of these same issues themselves?
Yeah, so I will say, um, for me, again, I am very lucky in that I've been ensconced by people who do understand or do want the best for me. I also recognize that a lot of people don't have that privilege. And so that is really, it's unfortunately fathomable. And so for those people, I just want to say that you are not alone. And whether yes, I just want to say that you are not alone. There are people out there who can help, whether it be something such as an anonymous helpline, which is something that I've been looking into, whether it be doing your own research as to people who have gone through similar issues and maybe finding someone who you can talk to about it, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a friend who you can trust. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is that you're not alone and there is help out there for you.
That's awesome. I wanted to tell you that you talked about in your article that Ryan O'Callahan you mentioned as someone who played football, who came out and was a positive impact on you to be able to see. You have, through your articles, through discussing this, you are now that person to so many people. So I hope that you recognize how important and how amazing it is that you have taken that step to write about and put out these experiences that are very painful and difficult to deal with and don't just end easily. So thank you so much for talking about it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I would absolutely encourage you to read Christian's articles on OutSports. If you search his name and search OutSports, it will absolutely come up. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.